Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Premier League review supplemental. I'm sure you're enjoying the off-season as much as I am, and lots of transfer activity going on, particularly among teams that are looking to close the Man City gap within the Premier League. A lot of big spending going on, suggesting we've turned something of a corner financially. But we're not going to talk about that specifically today. We'll pick up on that in the next supplemental. What I want to talk about this time around is the rise of a league that has impacted severely on the shape and nature of the Premier League, including, in some cases, negotiations around players and their continued involvement within it. And strangely enough, I'm going to be talking about the Saudi Pro League and how it's rose to prominence, and as the Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund continues to bankroll everything across sports and entertainment. A miracle that perhaps it's taken this long for them to become a real factor in footballing terms. You've probably seen some high-profile names already going out to Saudi Arabia to play there. Cristiano Ronaldo, who didn't cover himself in glory in his second spell at United, made a fool of himself in the World Cup, and just negative headlines, petulance. He's ended up out there because increasingly his options were running out. And that's great, it generates a lot of headlines. But some of the signings that have happened this summer have been a genuine surprise, and certainly when you look at some of the names and how many years that they potentially had left, it really makes you wonder about how the Premier League is going to retain experience within itself. So what do I mean by this? Well, look, the reality of being a pro football player is that when you get to the end of a contract and you hit 30, between 30 and 32, you know you have one big move left in you. Okay, you've got one big money move and you get your agent out there to hustle. It can be a contract bump at the club you've been at already, for loyalty, outstanding performance, whatever it might be. You know, you get that big testimonial once you hit your 10. Or it can be a move abroad. It can be a move to a smaller league but with bigger spending power, but it's generally your last opportunity to get the bag. One of the ways the Premier League has always operated, until a few upstart organisations have really booked the trend, a way to get experience and quality into your team if you're in the bottom half of the Prem, is you take the scraps from the table of the top 6, top 8, where players maybe aren't good enough to get in there anymore, or they can get a bigger contract with you than what's on the table, or just a longer contract and therefore more job security, and that ends up increasing the quality of your team relative to where you've been positioned historically. That's always been a way that the Premier League has functioned. Players tend to flow downstream and they pass on their experience, their knowledge, their performance to the smaller teams. They get to extend their career in doing so. Now, we've seen increasingly that the orgs that aren't relying on that method are Brighton, Brentford, where they're legitimately putting out a very smart Moneyball approach. In fact, I would go so far as to say Brentford and Brighton, in terms of their scouting and signings, I don't think I've been as impressed in the Premier League since the days of Arsene Wenger, back when he assembled the team that went on to be the Invincibles. People probably don't realise that. The fact that, you know, Wenger was able to find players like Petit and Vieira. You know, Vieira was in AC Milan reserves, being groomed potentially as a long-term replacement for Desailly, but that was where he was. You know, Henry, I think, had just moved to Juventus. He was being played as a winger, not a striker. And Wenger was looking at all the various stats and ways he could bring these players together. And obviously, you know, there were some established names, you know, Overmars, people like that. They obviously had the bedrock of an incredible back four with like legendary players like Tony Adams and Keown and David Seaman. I get that. But in terms of the players they were able to go out and find, Nicolas Anelka, you know, players like this that didn't have big names, that was all done through very, very smart scouting. And even bit part players like Gramondi and people like that, they all made a contribution to one of the Premier League's best teams. Now, Brentford and Brighton are knocking on the door of Europe on a shoestring budget because they've been able to unearth gems using similar scouting methods. And they're not reliant anymore on picking up that veteran 32-year-old for 10, 15 million, but on a massive salary, just in the hopes of getting some last of the summer wine out of him. That's Brighton and Brentford. But the rest of the teams that are in the Prem, the teams that are looking to maybe get something, get a great deal, the fallen giants, the Evertons, the West Hams, they are now finding there is this new menace in the form of the Saudi Arabian Pro League, the Saudi Pro League. You know, I want to point out some of the crazy deals that have gone on. Now, N'Golo Kante, obviously, if you're a regular listener, you know how highly I value N'Golo Kante. He was one of the crucial factors in Leicester winning that shock Premier League. He was instrumental to everything Chelsea were doing back when they were top four and solid. And when he was injured, they acutely felt his loss. They wanted, I think, to get him on another short-term deal. I believe he's about 34 now. He's been there 7 years. He's a veteran. He's still quality. He's still been in the French team. But the problem they got is, how can you possibly negotiate up against this? Al Ittihad came in and they're offering him, it was something like 86 million a year for a 4-year deal. Now, in a normal, sane world, N'Golo Kante either stays at Chelsea or he goes to a team that's a mid-table team or he goes to Italy or Spain. But now he's playing in the Saudi League and nobody could come close to offering him a salary like that. I mean, Chelsea in particular, because we know they're a doughy squad and they did have a lot of flab around that midsection. But some of it is like really shocking, like Kalidou Koulibaly. Right now, Koulibaly, he had some stinkers, but I don't think he was like the standout problem with Chelsea defensively or just in general during the turbulent season they've had. And he was only brought in last summer for around about, I think it was like 35 million, something like that. And he's gone to Al Hilal now for 17 million. So after a season, they're just taking a cut on a 32-year-old. They're just like, yeah, whatever, we're out. He's negotiated the bag. They get a fraction of what they paid for him. But obviously now they're looking to trim the fat ahead of Pochettino coming in. Pochettino will want to make signings probably, by the way. And so, again, Koulibaly is like a player who ordinarily would maybe see out his contract at Chelsea, become a squad player, or, again, would be somebody who, like, for me, he's got West Ham written all over him, that kind of player originally, without the existence of the Saudi Pro League, right? He gets to stay in London, you know, they could use a defender, he's got international quality, he was very good at Napoli, that's what prompted Chelsea to sign him in the first place. Champions League experience. I mean, you know, like, but now he's playing in the Saudi Pro League. And the most shocking of all, Ruben Neves from Wolves. Now, Wolves have looked better under Lopetegui, but I understood immediately this was Neves' last season. Wolves have struggled the entire time Neves has been there. He was too good for the club. That's just the reality of it. He's a fantastic player, unbelievably talented. And for me, he should have been airlifted into the top 6 in the Prem. Ruben Neves, I saw him at United. I mean, this is how highly I rate this player. You saw he had all the fire, all the drive, all that passion, can shoot from distance, puts a tackle in, spray passes around. And, you know, after Casemiro, there's a pretty big fucking drop-off at Man United centre midfield. Don't tell me you wouldn't put Neves in there instead of Fred or McTominay or someone like that. And he's available for like 40, 45 mil. This is a bargain. This is a steal. I mean, certainly, if he wanted to do it to himself, he could go to Tottenham. But I was aghast when I saw the news that he had joined Al Hilal. Because this is a player in his mid-20s, mid to late 20s. He's gone there on a 3-year deal. He could win the Saudi Pro League all of those 3 years. He could stay there for the entirety of his contract, win it 3 times, be a club legend, whatever that means. But those accolades don't count. And this is a player who's like really good. He should be playing in one of the top leagues in the world. I don't think I've ever seen anyone willingly squander for the bag like this before. Like it's actually crazy that Neves is playing in the Saudi Pro League. But that's the reality of it. I mean, as well, Edouard Mendy, I think he was like 2021's UEFA Goalkeeper of the Year. Well, he's at Al Ahly now, 16 million, not got a future at Chelsea, apparently, not got a future in the Premier League. He's only 31, that's young for a goalkeeper, especially one as mobile and fit as Mendy has been. Surely, I mean, look, again, Everton, it's looking likely that maybe Pickford's going to go. Strongly linked with United, been linked with a few other clubs. United, the front runner at the time of recording this. Surely, but no. Again, apparently the best place for him to go is to the Saudi League. And there's been other little... there's been other contributing factors. Like, understand, I don't care if Messi goes to this league. I don't care if Neymar goes to this league. That's fine. That feels like something that should happen. But Hakim Ziyech, for example, from Chelsea, he's being constantly linked. In fact, as I sat down, I was just checking the news. Apparently, he's failed a medical, which I don't know if that's going to stymie the deal, but he's being linked with a move to Al Nassr. You know, he had a fantastic World Cup campaign, right? Just took Morocco to the first semi-final for an African nation. Ziyech is 30 years old and again looking to move to Al Nassr, and instead of being maybe getting a fresh opportunity under Pochettino. Now, look, I'll be honest, Ziyech hasn't looked great at Chelsea. He's had fits and starts, but Pochettino is a totally different prospect to managers they've had there before. But instead now, out he goes, and who knows what could have been, and I'm sure a lot of Chelsea fans aren't going to say goodbye. Let's be real. Chelsea fans have problems of their own. Interestingly enough, the scourge of the sort of rise of the Saudi Pro League is also impacted on Man City. They've been in Bernardo Silva's ear. You'll have seen the signing of Kovacic. Again, we'll pick up that in the next supplemental. But Bernardo Silva has been in talks with Al Hilal all summer and looks to be leaving. There has been talk about him potentially going to PSG, potentially going to Barcelona. I don't know. He's got the same agent as Neves. And so it makes me wonder if these agents are getting insane financial inducements to recommend that their clients go to these teams, or just, obviously they get a percentage cut of the deals they're bringing in. So the bigger the deal, everyone wins. But again, Bernardo Silva, he's been at City since 2017. Great player. You have to be a good player to be part of that City squad. And while sure his opportunities might be limited, as increasingly City are looking to raise their overall quality and make sure they don't end up static. They're always bringing in new players, just improving and tweaking here and there so they don't get caught cold like they did when Kompany left. It's still crazy to me to think about a player at City who is allegedly wanted by PSG and Barcelona is giving serious consideration to joining Al Hilal, and maybe in a money move that doesn't actually help City. Who knows? I mean, again, we know there's a lot of backroom deals done, and with City's ownership, maybe the gentle suggestion is actually we'd like Silva to go here, even if it does mean less money overall. Just as a final point as well, spare a thought for the likes of Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace have had what to me is terrible news. Roy Hodgson says he's going to stay on for another season. I think Roy Hodgson's one of the biggest managerial frauds of all time. And I think Vieira was done wrong by the club. Some Palace fans agree. They've given me that feedback, but my opinions are my own. Zaha must have the best agent in the game, in my opinion, because I have read all summer about how Zaha is linked with, Arsenal. He's linked with Juventus. He's been linked with almost every big PSG. He's been linked with every big club. And this is a 30-year-old winger who has been a perennial underachiever. And apparently Al Nassr are saying we're going to pay you £30 million a year. Now, he is an instrumental player for Palace. Palace are one of those teams I'm talking about that need to get the scraps from the table. But the problem is they can't even keep their own feast down. They can't even have their own dinner because this Saudi Pro League are looking to swoop in and take anyone that's even got, a vague sense of quality. They were also potentially disrupting Son from Tottenham, which is crazy, but that move is almost certainly not happening. They've been in there as Chelsea try and decide whether or not Lukaku's going to come back to the club, and Al Hilal's been in there trying to disrupt. And it's like, listen, this is always the way it works. The only thing that's different about it this time is it's the Saudi Pro League. But obviously, this is now an additional spending force, an additional factor that teams are going to have to get round. And it does have an opportunity to potentially usurp some of the overall strength and depth of the Prem and stop opportunities for smaller teams in the Prem. So, I don't know. It's been a very, very weird season. Some big transfers still to come. I'm hoping by the end of this week we're going to have Kane resolved one way or the other where he's going to go, because I've got lots of thoughts about that. Bayern Munich have been in again with a somewhat derisory 60 million bid. But as I said, I wanted to just give some quick thoughts about the rise of the Saudi Pro League, how it's affected the Premier League off-season, and I'll be back to talk about the big signings in the next Premier Review supplemental. Thanks for listening.